Hi and welcome. I'm Mary Jo, also known as SewJo. And this is part 6 of my completed quilts trunk show, where I show quilts around my house, about 10 at a time. Now, these first 3 are all from my bedroom. So this is going to be number 51. Now, this is the first quilt, what I consider the first quilt that I ever made. This is a king-size quilt, so I really jumped in big when I started quilting. Now, the interesting thing about this is there is no quilting on it. Like I said, this was my first quilt. I didn't really think there needed to be, so I didn't quilt. Since then, that opinion has changed. But I'll kind of turn a little bit of it over so you can see the back. So I just kind of flipped that bottom of it up. But as you can see, there's no quilting. Now this is number 52. This is my king-size puff quilt that I made. Now this is the second puff quilt that I made. The other one was quite large too. Now this is the quilt that I sleep with every night. Like I said, this is my second one. Before I made that first quilt, number 51, I had made a puff quilt. Why I don't consider that my first quilt, I don't know, but I did. So this is the second puff quilt I made. And there's just a glimpse of that navy blue backing. Now, after I made all those little pillow-like structures and sewed them together, I just threw the backing, the navy blue backing on, and then left an opening and turned the quilt out, kind of like birthing a quilt. So there's actually no quilting on this either after I sewed all those pillows together and put the backing on it. Now this is number 53, and the name of this pattern was Star Spin Quilt by Oregon Treasures, and it was quilted with a paisley pantograph. Now I had shown this quilt on my very first video I had ever made, and I chose that paisley pantograph because I have some fabrics in there that have paisleys. I'll flip it over and we can take a look at the back. So I just folded part of it over so you can take a look at that gray backing. Now this is number 54. Now I had made this from a panel and I followed a free pattern that I had, but I don't remember what that pattern was. I'd also showed this one on one of my weekly updates. But this is a memory quilt that I had made for my husband in remembrance of his mother, who had passed away a few years ago. And she loved lighthouses. The lighthouses, and there's 6 different fabrics in there representing the 6 different kids. And I quilted it with a pantograph that had messages in the bottle. So it's like, she's sending messages. And, the messages are floating out in the sea and the old message in a bottle. So we'll flip it over and take a look at the back. And there's just that lighthouse fabric on the back. And the quilt label in the corner says that I finished this in 2021. Now this one is number 55. Now, I know I got this pattern from a quilt magazine, but I looked through all my quilt magazines and I couldn't find the pattern, so I don't know the name of it. But it was quilted with a pantograph called Ribbon and Roses. So we'll flip it over and take a look at that back. So there's the back of that quilt. And this quilt didn't have a quilt label on it, so I don't know when I finished it. Now this is number 56, and this was a pattern called Barbed Wire, and it was from a quilt book, which was the best of Fons and Porter's Scrap Explosion Quilts. And it was quilted with a pantograph that had flowers and butterflies on it. I had also showed this one on a weekly update. But I'll flip it over and we'll take a look at the back. And there is a look at the back. And the quilt label says that it was finished in 2019. Now this is number 57, and this is just a mini quilt, and it came in a sew sampler box. The pattern was called Mai Tai, and it was made with pineapple foundation paper piecing pads. And I quilted it with a pantograph called Petalism. We'll flip it over and take a look at the back. So that's a look at the back, and according to the label, it was made in 2019. And this is number 58. Now this was another sew sampler box, and the pattern was called Confetti Star, and it used Tula Pink fabric, and I quilted it using the Whipsy pantograph. We'll flip it over and take a look at the back. And there's the back, and it was finished in 2019 according to the quilt label. Now I think 2019 was probably the most I've ever done in quilting. I quilted a lot in 2019. Now this is number 59, and this is an all batik quilt, and I got this pattern from a 2017 shop hop over in Shipshewana, and it was from a place, a quilting shop called Caroline's Cottage Cotton, and the pattern name was Picnic Under the Stars. Now this was a free pattern we got for participating in the shop hop. And it was quilted with a leaf pantograph. I'll flip it over and we can take a look at the back. So there is a look at the back. Now it doesn't have a quilt label on it, so I don't know what year I completed. I didn't start putting labels on my quilts until a few years ago. I think around 2019 is when I started putting labels. So it was done 2017, 2018. All right, one more. Now this is number 60, and I just showed this one on my last weekly update. Now this pattern, I don't know the name of it. I remember, or I believe it was from a free download that I had got, which I no longer have access to that account. So I don't know the name of the pattern. But I did quilt it in that Whipsy pantograph. That Whipsy pantograph seems to be my go-to when I don't know what else to quilt. Well, flip it over and take a look at the back. And that is the back of number 60. So that brings part 6 to an end. But don't worry, I've got many more quilts to show with many more parts. Till next time. Bye!